Hi, I'm Lisa Myrie-Luke with Axalta Coating Systems, and today we're pleased to chat with Stan Johnson, who is the designer, builder, and now restorer of what he affectionately calls the Silver Bullet. Now, the Silver Bullet is a former race car that has a very theatrical story. It was lost and now it's found, and Axalta is pleased to be a part of that story because the car was painted in our paint about 40 plus years ago, and it was recently restored earlier this year with our paint as well. So Stan, you're a young man now, but you were an even younger man in the 60s when you decided, fresh out of college, to design and build this race car. What made you decide to do that?
Well, it's an interesting story because in high school, our car club, and car clubs were very popular in the 50s, like American Graffiti and so on. We started building and helping to build the drag strip here. And the kids decided, we were kids, to build our own dragster since we had a drag strip. And I decided to start building my own because it looked like really a lot of fun. So I built a rather crude dragster. I sat in the trunk, and it was a $125 total bill to build the car. Went 114 miles an hour, and I thought might be what I want to do is something mechanical, and that exposure to the mechanics and the engineering of the cars at high school graduation age approximately helped me and chose a career in college of being an industrial designer, which combines creativity and engineering. Mm-hmm. And upon graduation as an industrial designer, I had this designer dream to build a really neat dragster, one that was streamlined and one unlike anyone else's because I was a designer. And since then, to this date, no one has built, to my knowledge, a streamlined, fully enclosed roadster. And that's how it started.
How very exciting. So how long did it take from the design stage to the completion of the building stage for you to create the Silver Bullet?
At the time, it started with an illustration. I was a designer, so I could draw, okay? And I have that the original illustration here, and it looks like this. That's how it started. Pencil drawing of this concept of mine. And my brother, Tom, and another friend of ours started building it in my garage. It wasn't, professional or anything. We were only, 25 at that point out of college. And from this sketch to getting it on the track took about a year and a half.
Yeah, so that was definitely a labor of love, if you will. The name Silver Bullet is pretty interesting as well. And nowadays, the teenagers, when you hear Silver Bullet, they think of their favorite werewolf movie. So how did you come across that name?
It wasn't like coming across. Going back again to time-wise, I was a child in the 40s, born in the 30s. And at that time, we listened to the radio and used our imagination to fill in what we didn't see, which was terrific. And The Adventures of the Lone Ranger was just a really big program at that time. And I was permanently impressed by the Lone Ranger and his horse Silver. I think you're seeing where I'm going, and his silver bullets. Mm-hmm. I thought, how neat would it be to finish my dream roadster that I'm building in a silver finish and name it the Silver Bullet, which I did. And coincidentally, we were required to wear silver fire suits at that time. And this fire suit, of course, had a mask. I'm thinking, wow, this is coming together. And I made a logo, as you're aware of, in the Silver Bullet, in a bullet logo, and designed it all by hand. And it was interesting that the Lone Ranger, and I did a little research on this looking back, he used only silver bullets to remind himself that life too is precious, and like his silver bullets, is not to be wasted or thrown away. Has anybody quoted the Lone Ranger to you lately?
No, I think it's safe to say no one in my lifetime has ever done that. And I think you're going to be making our viewers run out to rent some movies here, and or maybe just go to their computers and rent some movies to see the Lone Ranger. Very interesting story there. So you actually raced this race car for 4 years in the 60s, and then you sold it. Why did you sell it, and what happened after that?
I sold it in 1969 to raise some capital to start my own industrial design business. And it was sold to a fellow in Canada. And he put it on a tour, a show car tour, rather than racing it, in Europe for 5 years. And it was gone for about 5 years. Somehow, in a shipping accident, I'm told this was damaged. And it was when it returned to Canada, he took it apart, all apart. And the parts went to various directions, it got lost, damaged, and so on. And actually, the car and any of the parts had never been back in the United States until November 2012 when I bought them.
Wow. So I read in reading your story previously that you actually saw an image of what was left of the silver bullet on the internet. Were you surprised to see that, and how did that make you feel?
Well, after perhaps there's a 45-year lapse there, I had given up. It hadn't even entered my mind that I'd ever see any parts or any part of this beautiful car again. And with actual disbelief, a friend of mine called and said, "Stan, I think there's some parts of your silver bullet on the internet posted by a fellow in Canada." And I looked it up on the internet and said, "That's my parts." I called the fellow or emailed him and said, "I'll show you what the rest of the car looks like, all the missing parts. Start looking for the missing parts that you don't have, okay?" So the more I could find, the better. And it's interesting to me because some dreams die, some dreams never die, and some dreams die and come back to life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What an amazing story that is. And it was meant to be. So you recently finished round 2 of a labor of love rebuilding the silver bullet. So initially it was painted with a color called Cadillac Fire Mist Silver in the 60s, and you recently restored it earlier this year and repainted it again in Axalta coating system, same color, Cadillac Fire Mist Silver. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, 50 years ago, almost, when it was time to paint the car, and as I've said before, it was going to be silver, I came across the Fire Mist Silver, which was a Cadillac color at the time. And it was a pure, rich, intense silver that really enhanced the body highlights and shadows. In the business, we kind of call that a flop, where it goes to dark shadows and bright highlights and really intensifies the shapes on the car. And, of course, I painted it that and repainted it 2 years ago, the same color, of course, because you can still color match 50-year-old colors. And, boy, I've had any number of comments and compliments and inquiries on the color, and people are astounded that it's the same color and it's as new now 50 years later as it was then. You're going to see 50-year-old Cadillac Fire Mist cars running around now.
Absolutely. You started a trend, and we're really glad you did. I think it's a brilliant choice of paint color by a brilliant choice of company as well, if I do say so myself. So, Stan, we have a lot of Axalta racing fans, and I'm sure they're probably curious to know if you've ever raced in any other vehicles besides the Silver Bullet.
Yes, I have. I can't imagine not racing almost everything once the bug is in your system. And over the years, since high school, and we started drag racing at 18 years old, I've raced snowmobiles. I built a snowmobile streamliner and held the land speed record for snowmobiles. I've raced ATVs, built my own tires for ATV racing. I've road raced go-karts and sports cars on road racing, which I still do. I still drag race. I have a fuel-altered roadster. And I have built from scratch a Bonneville car for the Bonneville Salt Flats, which is the holy grail of most old-time and new-time racers. It's very, very popular, and it's just a sensational venue in Utah. We'll be out there with the Bonneville Roadster in the beginning of August of this year. So it's full speed ahead, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, wow, you sound like you certainly have a need for speed, Stan. So I have a question for you. Is the restoration or the reloading, if you will, of the Silver Bullet one of the things you're most proud of?
Yes, and particularly from the standpoint that that was designed by myself 50 years ago, and it's actually getting rave reviews now 50 years later. And a designer's goal is to produce timeless products, whether it's a consumer product that you have in your house that I designed, or in this case, the car. It's not aged at all in 50 years. I wish I could say the same for myself.
Stan, you look pretty good to me, so I think you're doing a good job. It might be all that speed, I don't know. So
adrenaline.
You travel, that's a beautiful thing.
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, absolutely.
Adrenaline will keep you young.
Good tip for all of the Axalta race fans out there.
Yes.
So Stan, what's next for the Silver Bullet?
We are going to show it at the Heritage drag races in Bowling Green in about a week and a half, which is a terrific National Hot Rod Heritage Series meet. We're planning on the Street Rod Nationals with Axalta in middle of July in Louisville. We're planning on the debut in Wisconsin here of the car, which hasn't been seen here in 50 years, at the Wilson Center for the Arts. I'm going to have a show there. And I think we most likely won't have it ready to exhibition race this summer. That will be next year. This we'll pretty well book showing the car, meeting people, and getting everybody to see the Silver Bullet again.
Absolutely. Sounds like you're going to be pretty busy there for a long time to come. So Stan, we really appreciate your time, and we think the Silver Bullet story is exciting. It's a wonderful journey that you and the car have both been on, and we are so thrilled that you decided to paint it with a brilliant Axalta paint color. So Stan, best wishes to you.
Fine. Thank you very much, Lisa. It was my pleasure.